I smoothed my apron and took a deep breath, steeling myself for another Sunday dinner with Gloria. The aroma of roast chicken filled the kitchen, but my stomach churned with dread. "Emily, dear, are you sure you used enough seasoning?" Gloria's syrupy voice drifted in from the dining room. "The last time it was so bland." I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to remind her that she'd praised that very same chicken recipe just last month. "I'm sure it'll be delicious, Gloria," I called back, forcing cheerfulness into my voice. Aaron appeared in the doorway, his brow furrowed. "Need any help, honey?" I shook my head, offering a tight smile. "I've got it under control. Why don't you keep your mother company?" He hesitated, clearly sensing the tension. "You know, Mom means well. She just—" "Aaron!" Gloria's voice cut through our conversation like a knife. "Come tell me about that big project at work. Emily can manage in the kitchen, I'm sure." I watched my husband's shoulders slump as he turned away, leaving me alone with my simmering resentment. As I carried the platter to the dining room, I caught sight of my reflection in the hall mirror. At 35, I looked older than my years, worry lines etched around my eyes. "There she is!" Gloria beamed, her perfectly coiffed silver hair gleaming in the soft light. I was beginning to wonder if we'd eat before midnight. I set the platter down, forcing a laugh. "Oh, Gloria, you're such a kidder." Aaron cleared his throat. "It looks great, Em, doesn't it, Mom?" Gloria peered at the chicken, her nose wrinkling slightly. "Well, it certainly looks interesting. Did you try that new recipe I sent you?" "Actually, because I specifically remember telling you how much Aaron loves lemon and rosemary. Didn't I, darling?" Aaron shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Mom, Emily's chicken is always delicious. Let's just enjoy the meal, okay?" I sat down, my hands shaking slightly as I reached for the serving spoon. The meal progressed with Gloria peppering Aaron with questions about work, barely acknowledging my presence except to make thinly veiled criticisms about the food or the state of the house. "You know, Emily," Gloria said, dabbing at her mouth with a napkin, "I was talking to my friend Marge the other day. Her daughter-in-law works full-time and still manages to keep a spotless home. I don't know how she does it." I gripped my fork tighter. "Well, It's probably because she doesn't have children yet," Gloria continued, her eyes boring into mine. "Speaking of which, when are you two planning on giving me some grandchildren? I'm not getting any younger, you know." The room fell silent. I looked to Aaron, silently pleading for support, but he stared down at his plate. "We're still discussing it," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. Gloria squeaked. "Well, don't wait too long. Tick-tock, dear." I abruptly stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "Excuse me, I need some air." I fled to the back porch, gulping in the cool evening air. Tears pricked at my eyes as I leaned against the railing, wondering how much longer I could endure this weekly torment. The screen door creaked open behind me. Aaron's voice was soft, hesitant. I turned to face him, no longer able to hide my distress. "I can't do this anymore, Aaron. Your mother, she's—" I know," he said, running a hand through his hair. "She can be a bit much, but she loves us in her own way." I shook my head, frustration bubbling up inside me. "Love? Is that what you call it? She criticizes everything I do, makes me feel worthless in my own home. And you just sit there and let it happen." Aaron's face fell. "That's not fair, Em. I'm trying to keep the peace. What do you want me to do? Choose between my wife and my mother?" The words hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. Before I could respond, Gloria's voice rang out from inside. "Aaron? Emily? Where did you two run off to? The dishes won't do themselves, you know." I closed my eyes, feeling the last of my resolve crumble. When I opened them again, I saw the conflict etched on Aaron's face. In that moment, I realized that our marriage had become a battlefield, with Gloria as the opposing general. And I was losing the war. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window, but its warmth did nothing to ease the chill that had settled between Aaron and me since last night's disastrous dinner. I mechanically flipped pancakes, my mind racing with unspoken words and simmering frustrations. Aaron shuffled into the kitchen, his tie askew. "Morning, Em," he mumbled, reaching for the coffee pot. I turned to face him, spatula in hand. "We need to talk about last night." He sighed, shoulders slumping. "Can't we just forget about it? Mom didn't mean—" The doorbell's shrill ring cut him off. We exchanged puzzled glances before Aaron went to answer it. "Mom, I heard him say, surprise evident in his voice. "What are you doing here so early?" My stomach dropped as Gloria's voice carried through the house. "Can't a mother visit her son without an interrogation?" "I brought breakfast." I gripped the counter, willing myself to stay calm as they entered the kitchen. Gloria breezed past me, setting a bakery box on the table. "Oh, Emily, dear, you didn't need to cook. I brought those croissants Aaron loves." She wrinkled her nose at my pancakes. "Though I suppose we could have both. Wouldn't want your efforts to go to waste." I plastered on a smile. "How thoughtful of you, Gloria." Aaron cleared his throat. "Mom, this is unexpected. Emily and I were just about to—" "Nonsense," Gloria interrupted, waving a manicured hand. "I have wonderful news that simply couldn't wait." She beamed at us both. "I've decided to move closer. I found the most darling little house just 3 blocks away. Won't that be lovely?" The spatula clattered to the floor. Aaron's face paled as he looked at me, then back to his mother. "Mom, that's quite a decision. Are you sure?" Gloria's eyes narrowed. "Of course I'm sure. Don't you want me nearby? Especially when you two finally decide to give me grandchildren." She turned to me, her gaze sharp. "Speaking of which, Emily, have you seen a doctor about your situation? At your age, fertility can be such a concern." The room spun. I gripped the edge of the counter, feeling as if the ground was crumbling beneath my feet. We. "Mom," Aaron interjected, his voice strained. "Emily and I haven't decided about children yet. It's a big decision." Gloria's laugh was like glass shattering. "Oh, Aaron, you're not getting any younger either, you know. And Emily, well," she gave me a pitying look. "Tick-tock, dear." Something inside me snapped. "That's enough!" I shouted, surprising even myself. "I will not be bullied in my own home. Our family planning is none of your business, Gloria." The room fell silent. Aaron stared at me, wide-eyed, while Gloria's face flushed an angry red. "Well, I never," she huffed. "Aaron, are you going to let her speak to me like that?" I turned to my husband, silently pleading for support. He looked between us, conflict etched on his face. "Mom, Emily's right. We need some space to make these decisions on our own." Gloria's eyes filled with tears. "My own son, turning against me, after all I've sacrificed for you." She gathered her purse, heading for the door. "I suppose I'll just go home and die alone, shall I?" As the door slammed behind her, Aaron slumped into a chair. "God, Em, what are we going to do?" I sank down beside him, emotionally drained. "I don't know, Aaron, but something has to change. I can't live like this anymore." He reached for my hand, his touch hesitant. Maybe we should start trying. For a baby, I mean. It might make things easier with Mom." I jerked my hand away, stung. "Is that what you want? To have a child just to appease your mother?" Aaron's face crumpled. "No, I don't know what I want anymore." As I looked at my husband, the man I loved, but who seemed increasingly like a stranger, a cold realization washed over me. Our marriage was hanging by a thread, and Gloria's scissors were poised to snip it. "Aaron," I said softly, my heart breaking, "we need help. Real help. Or I don't think we're going to make it." His silence was deafening, and in that moment, I felt more alone than ever before. The weeks following Gloria's announcement of her impending move blurred together in a haze of tension and unspoken resentment. I found myself withdrawing, spending more time alone in our bedroom, away from Aaron's conflicted gaze and the constant reminders of our crumbling marriage. One particularly gloomy afternoon, I sat on the edge of the bathtub, staring at the pregnancy test in my trembling hands. 2 pink lines stared back at me, undeniable and life-altering. "Emily?" Aaron's voice called from the hallway. "Are you okay? You've been in there a while?" I opened the door, my face a mask of shock. "I'm pregnant," I whispered. Aaron's eyes widened, a mix of emotions flashing across his face. "Are you sure?" I nodded, holding up the test. "I've been feeling off for weeks. I thought it was just stress, but—" He reached for me, then hesitated. "This is— wow. I mean, it's what Mom wanted, right?" His words hit me like a slap. "What your mother wanted? Is that all you can think about?" Aaron backpedaled. "No, I didn't mean—" "Save it," I snapped, pushing past him. "I need some air." I grabbed my keys and stormed out, ignoring Aaron's calls behind me. The cool autumn air hit my face as I walked aimlessly through our neighborhood, my mind reeling. A baby. Our baby. The one thing that should have brought us closer was instead highlighting the chasm between us. Lost in thought, I didn't notice the familiar car pulling up beside me until I heard her voice. "Emily?" What on earth are you doing out here alone? I turned to see Gloria, her face a picture of exaggerated concern. Just taking a walk, I muttered. She clucked her tongue. Nonsense. Get in. I'll drive you home. Too exhausted to argue, I slid into the passenger seat. Gloria chatted away, filling me in on her moving plans and the latest neighborhood gossip. I stared out the window, my hand unconsciously resting on my still flat stomach. Emily? Gloria's voice cut through my reverie. Are you even listening to me? I turned to face her, suddenly overwhelmed by the weight of my secret. I'm pregnant, I blurted out. Gloria's car swerved slightly before she regained control. What did you say? I'm pregnant, I repeated, my voice stronger. Aaron and I are having a baby. The car screeched to a halt as Gloria pulled over. She turned to me, her eyes gleaming with a mix of triumph and calculation. Oh, Emily, this is wonderful news. I knew you two would come around eventually. Have you told Aaron yet? Oh, we must start planning immediately. I have so many ideas for the nursery. Of course, I'll need to be there every step of the way to guide you. First-time mothers need all the help they can get, you know. Her words washed over me in a suffocating wave. This moment, which should have been filled with joy and excitement, felt tainted by Gloria's presumptuous planning and barely concealed criticism. Gloria, I interrupted, my voice shaking. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but Aaron and I need to process this ourselves first. We'll make our own decisions about the baby. Her face hardened. Now, Emily, don't be foolish. You clearly need guidance. Why, when I was pregnant with Aaron... Stop, I shouted, surprising us both. This is not about you, Gloria. This is about me, Aaron, and our child, our family. Gloria's eyes narrowed dangerously. Family? I am family, Emily. More so than you, it seems. Aaron will want me involved, you'll see. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Aaron. Where are you? Mom's here, looking for you. She seems upset. I looked up to see we were parked in front of our house, Aaron standing on the porch with a confused expression. Gloria was already out of the car, striding towards him with purpose. Aaron, darling, she called out. Emily has the most wonderful news. I scrambled out of the car, my heart pounding. Gloria, don't... But it was too late. As I watched Gloria embrace Aaron, whispering in his ear, I saw the future I had imagined for us slipping away. Our joyous announcement, our private celebration, all stolen in an instant. Aaron's eyes met mine over Gloria's shoulder, a mix of confusion, joy, and something else I couldn't quite name. In that moment, I realized that my pregnancy wasn't just the beginning of a new life. It was the catalyst that would either save our marriage or destroy it completely. As my pregnancy progressed, I found myself caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The joy of impending motherhood was constantly overshadowed by the growing distance between Aaron and me. Even more surprising was Gloria's sudden change in behavior. Emily, dear, you simply must put your feet up, Gloria cooed, fluffing a pillow behind me. In my day, we knew the importance of rest for expectant mothers. I blinked in confusion, unused to this new, attentive version of my mother-in-law. Thank you, Gloria. That's thoughtful of you. She beamed, patting my hand. Anything for my grandbaby. Now, let me fetch you some herbal tea. It's excellent for morning sickness. As Gloria bustled off to the kitchen, I caught Aaron's eye. He shrugged, looking as bewildered as I felt. I guess the baby news really changed things, he said, a hint of relief in his voice. I nodded, unsure how to feel about this unexpected turn of events. Part of me was grateful for the reprieve from Gloria's constant criticism, but another part remained wary, waiting for the other shoe to drop. As the weeks passed, Gloria's overbearing attentiveness began to grate on my nerves. She was constantly at our house, offering unsolicited advice and making plans for the baby's future. Meanwhile, Aaron grew increasingly distant, often working late and seeming distracted when he was home. One evening, as I sat alone in the nursery we'd begun to prepare, I heard Aaron's key in the lock. Glancing at the clock, I frowned. It was past 10 p.m., another late night at the office. Aaron called out softly. You still up? I waddled out to the hallway, one hand on my growing belly. Hey, I said, trying to keep the accusation out of my voice. Long day? He nodded, avoiding my eyes. Yeah, big project. Sorry I missed dinner. Again, I added, unable to keep the bitterness from my tone. Aaron sighed, running a hand through his hair. I said I was sorry, Em. What more do you want? I want my husband back, I exploded, months of frustration boiling over. I want the man who used to be excited about our baby, who used to talk to me, who used to. I trailed off, choking back a sob. Aaron's face crumpled. I'm trying. It's just, there's a lot of pressure at work, and with Mom always around. Don't blame this on your mother, I snapped. She may be overbearing, but at least she's here. Where are you, Aaron? Because it sure doesn't feel like you're in this with me. He reached for me, but I stepped back. I need some air, I muttered, grabbing my coat and keys. Emily, wait. But I was already out the door, tears blurring my vision as I made my way to the car. I drove aimlessly, eventually finding myself at a small park near our house. Sitting on a bench, I watched young families playing, their laughter a stark contrast to the heaviness in my heart. My phone buzzed insistently. Thinking it was Aaron, I almost ignored it, but something made me look. It was a text from an unknown number. Your husband isn't working late. He's with her again. Lincoln Hotel, room 302. See for yourself. My blood ran cold. With trembling hands, I started the car and drove to the hotel, my mind racing with possibilities, each worse than the last. As I approached room 302, I heard muffled laughter. Aaron's laugh, followed by a woman's voice I didn't recognize. I stood frozen, my hand poised to knock, when suddenly the door swung open. Aaron stood there, his shirt untucked, lipstick on his collar. Behind him, I caught a glimpse of a young woman hastily buttoning her blouse. Our eyes met, and in that moment, my world shattered. Emily, Aaron gasped, his face draining of color. I can explain. But I was already running, one hand protectively cradling my belly, the other wiping away hot tears of betrayal. As I drove home in a daze, one thought crystallized in my mind. I had to protect myself and my baby, no matter the cost. The life I had known was over. Now, I had to figure out how to build a new one from the ashes of betrayal. The days following my discovery of Aaron's infidelity passed in a blur of numbness and disbelief. I wandered our house like a ghost, mechanically going through the motions of daily life while my mind raced with unanswered questions and suppressed rage. Aaron's desperate attempts to explain and apologize fell on deaf ears. I couldn't bear to look at him, let alone listen to his excuses. Gloria, sensing the tension but unaware of its cause, hovered anxiously, her newfound solicitousness now grating on my last nerve. One afternoon, as I sat in the nursery folding tiny onesies, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meet me at Riverside Cafe at 3 p.m. if you want to know the whole truth. My heart raced. Could this be the same person who had tipped me off about Aaron's affair? Despite my better judgment, I found myself driving to the cafe, curiosity and desperation overriding caution. As I entered, a young woman with sleek blonde hair waved me over. My stomach clenched as I recognized her from the hotel room. Emily, she said, her voice surprisingly gentle. I'm Samantha. Thank you for coming. I sat down stiffly, my hands protectively cradling my belly. Why did you want to meet? Samantha sighed, pushing a folder across the table. Because you deserve to know everything. Aaron's been lying to both of us. With trembling hands, I opened the folder. Inside were photos, receipts, and printed emails documenting Aaron's affair, not just with Samantha, but with multiple women over the past year. He told me he was separated, Samantha explained, her eyes brimming with tears. When I found out about you and the baby, I knew I had to come clean. I stared at the evidence, feeling as if the ground had opened up beneath me. How long have you known? A few weeks, she admitted. I've been gathering evidence. Emily, there's more you need to know. Aaron's been embezzling from his company to fund these affairs. He's in deep trouble, and I'm afraid he might try to pin it on me. My mind reeled. The Aaron I thought I knew, my loving, supportive husband, was a complete stranger. A liar, a cheater, and now a thief. Why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Samantha reached across the table, hesitating before placing her hand on mine. Because I was wrong to get involved with a married man, and I want to make it right. You need to protect yourself and your baby, Emily. As I drove home, my emotions swung wildly between devastation and fury. How could Aaron do this to us? To our unborn child? And how had I been so blind? Entering our house, I found Aaron and Gloria in the living room, their hushed conversations stopping abruptly at my appearance. Emily, honey? Gloria cooed, her saccharine tone setting my teeth on edge. Where have you been? We've been so worried. I ignored her, fixing my gaze on Aaron. We need to talk. Now. Gloria started to protest, but Aaron cut her off. Mom, please, give us some privacy. As soon as we were alone, I slammed the folder down on the coffee table. Explain this, I hissed. Aaron's face drained of color as he flipped through the contents. I can explain. Explain what? I exploded. How you've been cheating on me for a year, how you've been stealing from your company, how you've lied to me every single day. He reached for me, but I recoiled. Emily, please. I made mistakes, but I love you. We can work this out. I laughed bitterly. Work it out. There's nothing left to work out, Aaron. It's over. You can't mean that, he pleaded. Think about the baby. We're a family. The mention of our child ignited a fierce protectiveness within me. That's exactly what I'm thinking about. Our baby deserves better than a lying, cheating father. Aaron's face hardened. You can't take my child away from me. If you try to leave, I'll fight you for custody. Who do you think the courts will favor? A successful businessman or an unemployed housewife? His threat hung in the air between us, and in that moment, I knew I had to be smarter than him. I couldn't let him know my next move. Forcing tears to my eyes, I softened my voice. You're right, I'm just upset. We should talk about this when we're both calmer. Relief washed over Aaron's face. Of course, Em. We'll figure this out together. As he pulled me into an embrace, my mind was already formulating a plan. I would play the forgiving wife, but in secret I would prepare for war. For the sake of my child, I would take down Aaron and Gloria, no matter the cost. The game had changed, and I was determined to win. The weeks following my discovery of Aaron's betrayal were a masterclass in deception. I played the role of the forgiving wife to perfection, all while secretly preparing my escape. Every gentle touch from Aaron, every sympathetic glance from Gloria only fueled my determination to break free. As my pregnancy progressed, I focused on gathering evidence. Late at night, I combed through financial records, documented Aaron's absences, and built a case that would ensure my freedom and my child's future. The weight of my secret felt crushing at times, but the life growing inside me gave me strength. Then, during a routine checkup, my world shifted again. Mrs. Thompson, the ultrasound technician said, her voice filled with excitement. I have wonderful news. You're having twins. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Twins. 2 precious lives depending on me. As joy and terror warred within me, I realized the stakes had just doubled. Leaving the clinic in a daze, I nearly collided with Gloria, who was waiting in the parking lot. Emily, dear, how was your appointment? She chirped, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. I hesitated, then made a split-second decision. It's twins, I said, watching her reaction carefully. Gloria's face lit up like a Christmas tree. Twins? Oh, this is marvelous. Aaron will be overjoyed. We must start planning immediately. I'll call the country club, book the perfect baby shower venue, and of course, you'll need my help more than ever now. I'll just have to move in to assist with the babies. As Gloria rambled on, making plans for my future, our future, without a second thought to my input, something inside me snapped. The facade I'd carefully maintained for weeks crumbled. No, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Gloria paused mid-sentence. I'm sorry, what did you say? I said no, I repeated louder this time. You won't be moving in, you won't be planning my baby shower, and you certainly won't be making decisions about my children's future. Gloria's eyes narrowed dangerously. Now, Emily, don't be foolish. You clearly can't handle twins on your own. Aaron and I... Aaron? I laughed bitterly. You mean the man who's been cheating on me for the past year? The one who's been embezzling from his company to fund his affairs? Gloria's face paled. What are you talking about? That's preposterous. I pulled out my phone, showing her the evidence I'd gathered. It's all true, Gloria. Your perfect son isn't so perfect after all. As Gloria sputtered and denied, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. I'm leaving him, Gloria. I'm taking my babies and starting a new life, far away from you and Aaron. Gloria's shock quickly turned to rage. You ungrateful little tramp, after everything we've done for you, you'll never get away with this. We'll fight you for custody. You'll have nothing. Her words hit me like a physical blow, but I stood my ground. Try it, I hissed. I have enough evidence to bury Aaron. One word from me and his career, his reputation, everything will be destroyed. As I turned to leave, Gloria grabbed my arm. You can't do this to us. To Aaron. He loves you. I wrenched my arm free. Love, is that what you call lying, cheating, and stealing? No, Gloria, that's not love, and I won't let my children grow up thinking it is. Driving home, my emotions swung wildly between elation and despair. The knowledge that I was carrying twins, two precious lives depending on me, filled me with a fierce, protective love. But the reality of my situation, a failing marriage, a deceitful husband, and a vindictive mother-in-law, threatened to overwhelm me. As I pulled into our driveway, I saw Aaron's car. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself for the confrontation to come. I had to tell him about the twins, had to gauge his reaction. It would be the final test, the moment that would determine whether there was anything left to salvage or if I needed to accelerate my plans to leave. With trembling hands, I opened the front door, the weight of my future and my children's future heavy on my shoulders. Whatever happened next would change everything. There was no turning back now. The confrontation with Aaron about the twins had been the final straw. His initial joy quickly morphed into panic about finances and how this would affect his freedom. In that moment, I knew there was no future for us. With shaking hands, I packed a small bag and drove to my parents' house, tears blurring my vision the entire way. Mom opened the door, her smile fading as she took in my disheveled appearance. "Emily, sweetheart, what's wrong?" I collapsed into her arms, sobs racking my body. Dad appeared behind her, his face etched with concern. They ushered me inside, and through broken sobs, I poured out the whole sordid tale. Aaron's affairs, the embezzlement, Gloria's manipulations, and finally the twins. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh, Emily, I'm so sorry. We had no idea." Dad's face darkened with anger. "That son of a... I'll kill him." I shook my head vehemently. "No, Dad, I need to handle this myself, for the babies." They exchanged a worried glance before Mom asked, "What are you going to do?" Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself. "I'm going to divorce him, after the twins are born." The words hung heavy in the air. My parents, shocked into silence, simply held me as I cried. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. My parents rallied around me, helping me contact lawyers and make plans for the future. Aaron called incessantly, alternating between tearful apologies and angry threats. I let them all go to voicemail, focusing instead on my health and the babies growing inside me. As my due date approached, the stress began to take its toll. My blood pressure spiked and the doctor ordered bed rest. Confined to my childhood bedroom, I felt like a prisoner in my own body, my mind racing with worries about the future. One afternoon, as I lay trying to nap, I heard raised voices downstairs. Curious, I crept to the top of the stairs, my heart pounding as I recognized the voices. "How dare you show up here?" Dad's voice boomed. "After what you've done to our daughter." "Please, Mr. Johnson," Aaron pleaded. "I just want to talk to Emily, to make things right." "There's nothing to make right," Mom interjected, her usually gentle voice hard as steel. "You've done enough damage. Leave before we call the police." "You can't keep me from my children," Aaron shouted. "I have rights." I gripped the banister, my knees weak. How dare he? After everything he'd done, he thought he had rights? Suddenly, a sharp pain ripped through my abdomen. I gasped, doubling over. Another pain followed, more intense than the first. "Mom," I called out, my voice strained. "Dad." The arguing voices below fell silent. Then a flurry of footsteps on the stairs. "Emily?" Mom's worried face appeared. "Oh, God, are you in labor?" I nodded, unable to speak through the pain. Dad appeared behind her side, his face pale. "I'm calling an ambulance," he said, pulling out his phone. "No." Aaron's voice came from behind them. "I'll drive. It'll be faster." For a moment we all froze, the tension palpable. Then another contraction hit, and I cried out in pain. "Fine," Dad growled, "but I'm coming with you." The drive to the hospital was a blur of pain and fear. Aaron kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, his face a mask of worry and guilt. Dad sat beside me in the back seat, holding my hand and murmuring words of encouragement. As we pulled up to the emergency entrance, a terrifying thought struck me. What if Aaron tried to take the babies? What if he and Gloria conspired to keep them from me? Panic seized me, making it hard to breathe. "Dad," I gasped. "Don't let him near the babies. Promise me." Dad's eyes met mine, understanding dawning in them. He nodded solemnly. "I promise, sweetheart. He won't get near them." As the nurses wheeled me into the delivery room, I caught one last glimpse of Aaron's face, a mixture of longing, regret, and something that looked almost like determination. In that moment, I knew that the real battle was just beginning. The doors swung shut behind me, and I steeled myself for what was to come. My children's future hung in the balance, and I was determined to fight with everything I had to protect them, no matter the cost. 3 months after the twins' birth, I stood at the front door of what was once my home, my heart pounding. Dad waited in the car with the babies, ready to intervene if needed. With a deep breath, I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was eerily quiet as I made my way to the bedroom, filling a suitcase with my remaining belongings. As I reached for a photo album on the top shelf, a stack of papers tumbled down. Curious, I picked them up, my blood running cold as I realized what they were. More evidence of Aaron's affairs and financial misdeeds. Emily? Aaron's voice startled me. I spun around to see him and Gloria in the doorway, their faces a mix of surprise and anger. "What are you doing here?" Gloria demanded, her eyes narrowing as she spotted the suitcase. I straightened my spine, clutching the papers. "I'm getting my things. I'm leaving, Aaron, for good this time." Aaron's face darkened. "You can't take my children away from me. I won't let you." "Your children?" I laughed bitterly. "The ones you've barely seen since they were born? The ones you were ready to abandon when you found out I was having twins?" Gloria gasped, turning to Aaron. "What is she talking about?" I held up the papers. "Why don't you ask your perfect son about his affairs, or about the money he's been embezzling from his company?" Aaron lunged forward, trying to snatch the papers, but I was quicker. "Emily, you don't understand. I can explain." "Explain what?" I shouted. Years of pent-up frustration pouring out. How you lied to me, cheated on me, made me feel worthless in my own home. Gloria's face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful little—" "No," I cut her off. "I'm done being silent, done being the perfect, obedient wife. I'm taking my children and starting a new life, away from your manipulation and Aaron's lies." Aaron's demeanor suddenly changed, his voice turning cold. "If you walk out that door, I'll destroy you. I'll take the twins, ruin your reputation. You'll have nothing." For a moment, fear gripped me. Then I remembered the strength I'd found in myself, the love I had for my children. I stood taller, meeting his gaze. "Try it," I said, my voice steady. "I have enough evidence to bury you, Aaron. One word from me, and your career, your reputation, everything you care about, will be gone." Gloria stepped forward, her voice sickly sweet. "Now, Emily, let's not be hasty. We're family. We can work this out." I turned to her, years of resentment bubbling to the surface. "Family? Is that what you call this? You've done nothing but undermine and belittle me from the day I married your son. Well, it ends now." I grabbed my suitcase, pushing past them towards the door. Aaron grabbed my arm, his grip painfully tight. "You can't do this to me," he hissed. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I wrenched my arm free and slapped him hard across the face. The sound echoed through the room, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. "Watch me," I said, my voice low and dangerous. As I walked out the front door, I heard Gloria wailing and Aaron calling my name. But I didn't look back. Dad was waiting, a proud smile on his face as he helped me into the car. Looking at my sleeping twins in the back seat, a wave of peace washed over me. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years I felt truly free. "Ready to go home?" Dad asked gently. I nodded, a small smile playing on my lips. "More than ready." As we drove away, I caught a final glimpse of Aaron and Gloria in the rearview mirror, standing shell-shocked on the front porch. The sight that once would have filled me with dread now only strengthened my resolve. I had survived their manipulation, their lies, and their attempts to break me. I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to create a beautiful life for myself and my children. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor, a fighter, and a mother who would move mountains for her children. As we turned the corner, leaving my old life behind, I felt a surge of excitement for what lay ahead. The journey wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face it head-on. After all, I had fought the hardest battle of my life and won. Whatever challenges came next, I knew I had the strength to overcome them. The road stretched out before us, full of promise and possibility. And for the first time in years, I couldn't wait to see where it would lead. I stood in the kitchen, my hands gripping the edge of the counter so tightly, my knuckles turned white. Michael's words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. "Lily, we need to talk about Mom," he said, his voice tinged with that familiar mix of guilt and determination. I turned to face him, my heart already sinking. "What about her?" Michael ran a hand through his graying hair. "Her house needs emergency repairs, the foundation's cracking, and it's not safe for her to stay there." "Okay," I said slowly, bracing myself for what I knew was coming next. "She needs to move in with us, just for a few months until the work's done." The words hit me like a physical blow. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Michael, we can't. You know how she is. She'll take over our lives." "She's my mother, Lily. What am I supposed to do? Let her live in a dangerous house?" I could feel the frustration building inside me. "There are other options. We could help her find a short-term rental, or—" "We can't afford that," Michael cut me off. "And she won't go for it anyway. She's family. This is what family does." I bit back a bitter laugh. Family. As if Martha had ever treated me like family in the 30 years I'd been married to her son. "Did you already tell her yes?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Michael's silence was confirmation enough. "Of course you did," I said, my voice rising. "Without even talking to me first. This is our home, Michael, our life. Don't I get a say?" "I'm sorry, Lily," he said, not sounding sorry at all. "But it's done. She'll be here next week." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "Next week? Michael, that's not enough time to—" "To what?" he snapped. "To come up with more excuses? She's coming, Lily. End of discussion." I watched him storm out of the kitchen, leaving me alone with the weight of his decision crushing down on me. I sank into a chair at the table, my mind reeling. Martha, living here. The thought alone was enough to make me want to run screaming from the house. The phone rang, startling me out of my daze. I answered it without thinking. "Hello, dear," came Martha's saccharine voice. "I hear I'll be staying with you for a while. Won't that be lovely?" I gritted my teeth. "Hello, Martha. Yes, Michael just told me." "Oh, good. I'm sure you'll make me feel right at home. You always were such a competent little homemaker." I could practically hear the sneer in her voice. "I'll do my best," I managed to say. "I'm sure you will," Martha said. "Oh, and dear, I hope you don't mind, but I'll need to bring Fluffy with me. You know how attached she is to her special chair. I'm sure you can find somewhere else to sit in the evenings." Fluffy, Martha's ancient, ill-tempered cat that hated everyone but her, and her special chair was my favorite reading spot in the living room. "Of course," I said, my free hand clenching into a fist. "Whatever makes you comfortable." "Wonderful. I knew you'd understand. See you next week, dear." The line went dead, and I let the phone drop from my hand. I stared at it, lying there on the table as the full reality of what was about to happen crashed over me. Martha was coming. She was going to invade my home, criticize my every move, and make my life a living hell. And Michael, the man who was supposed to be my partner, my protector, had invited her in without a second thought. I stood up, my legs shaky. I needed air. I needed space. I didn't know what I needed. But I knew one thing for certain. My life was about to change, and not for the better, and I had no idea how I was going to survive it. The day Martha moved in, our house transformed into a battleground. I'd spent the week preparing, scrubbing every surface until it gleamed, hoping to avoid her criticism. It didn't work. "Oh, Lily," Martha said, wrinkling her nose as she stepped inside. "You really should dust more often. I can see cobwebs in that corner." I bit my tongue, forcing a smile. "I'll take care of it, Martha." Michael lugged in her suitcases, grunting with effort. "Where do you want these, Mom?" "The guest room, of course," she said, as if it were obvious. "Though I suppose we should start calling it my room now." I felt a twinge of panic. "But that's my office. I need that space for work." Martha's eyes narrowed. "Work? At your age? Shouldn't you be thinking about retirement, dear?" "I'm only 58, I protested, "and I love my job." "Well, I'm sure you can find somewhere else to play with your computer," Martha said dismissively. "A grown woman shouldn't need a whole room for a hobby." I looked to Michael, silently pleading for support. He avoided my gaze. "Mom's right, Lily," he said. "You can set up your laptop in the living room or something." I felt like I'd been slapped. "But it's settled then," Martha interrupted. "Michael, be a dear and move my things in." "Lily, why don't you make us some tea?" I retreated to the kitchen, my hands shaking as I filled the kettle. This was only the beginning, and already I felt like a stranger in my own home. The next few days were a blur of snide comments and barely concealed insults. Martha criticized everything from my cooking to my clothes to the way I folded towels. And Michael, the man who once promised to stand by me through thick and thin, said nothing. One evening, I was working late on a project, my laptop balanced precariously on the arm of the sofa. Martha's cat, Fluffy, had claimed my favorite chair, hissing whenever I got too close. "Still pecking away at that thing?" Martha's voice made me jump. "It's nearly 9 o'clock, you know. A wife should have dinner on the table by now." I gritted my teeth. "Michael knows I have a deadline. He said he'd order pizza." Martha clicked her tongue disapprovingly. "Take out food at your age? No wonder you're putting on weight." "When I was your age." "I'm not putting on weight," I snapped, my patience finally wearing thin. Now, Martha said, her voice dripping with false concern. "There's no need to be defensive. I'm just looking out for your health. After all, you're not getting any younger, are you? And with no children to care for you in your old age?" The barb about my childlessness hit home as she knew it would. I blinked back tears, refusing to let her see how much it hurt. "I have work to do," I said, my voice tight. "Of course you do," Martha sighed. "It's a shame, really. If you'd focused more on being a proper wife and mother instead of chasing a career, things might have been different. Michael always wanted children, you know." I slammed my laptop shut, unable to take any more. "I'm going to bed." As I stormed past her, Martha called out, "Oh, and Lily, do try to be quieter in the morning. Your stomping around wakes me up, and I need my beauty sleep." I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, Michael snoring softly beside me. How had it come to this? How had I let myself become a doormat in my own home? Something had to change. I couldn't go on like this, swallowing my anger and hurt day after day. But what could I do? As I drifted off into an uneasy sleep, a plan began to form in my mind. If Martha and Michael wouldn't listen to my words, maybe they needed to hear them played back. Tomorrow, I decided, I would buy a voice recorder. It was time to gather evidence of the hell my life had become. Little did I know, that decision would set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. The tiny voice recorder felt like a lifeline in my hand. I'd bought it on my lunch break, heart pounding as I handed over the cash. Now, back home, I slipped it into my pocket, my fingers brushing against the smooth plastic for reassurance. "Lily, is that you?" Martha's voice rang out from the living room. "Come in here, we need to talk." I took a deep breath, pressed the record button, and stepped into the lion's den. Martha sat in my chair, Fluffy curled in her lap. Michael stood by the window, his back to me. "There you are," Martha said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "Michael and I have been discussing your situation." I felt a chill run down my spine. "My situation?" "Your work, dear. It's becoming a problem." I glanced at Michael, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. "What do you mean?" Martha sighed dramatically. "You're never home, always hunched over that computer. It's not healthy, and it's certainly not fair to Michael." "I'm providing for us," I said, my voice tight. "My job is important." "More important than your family?" Martha's eyes narrowed. "Michael tells me you haven't even started dinner yet. It's already 6 o'clock. I bit back a retort, acutely aware of the recorder in my pocket. "I was planning to cook after I finished my project." "See?" Martha turned to Michael. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. No wonder you two never had children. She's too busy playing career woman to be a proper wife." The words hit me like a physical blow. I looked to Michael, silently begging him to defend me. He cleared his throat. "Mom's right, Lily. Maybe it's time to think about cutting back at work. We could use the help around here." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Michael, my job pays our mortgage. It's not some hobby I can just give up." "Don't be dramatic," Martha scoffed. "Michael makes plenty. You don't need to work. Unless..." She paused, her eyes glinting maliciously. "Unless you're planning to leave him. Is that it? Are you squirreling away money for a divorce?" "What?" "No," I sputtered, shocked by the accusation. Michael finally turned to face me, his expression a mix of hurt and anger. "Is that true, Lily? Are you planning to leave me?" I felt like I was drowning, gasping for air in a sea of absurdity. "Of course not. How could you even think that?" "Well, what are we supposed to think?" Martha interjected. "You're always working, never home. You barely speak to Michael anymore. If you're not saving for a divorce, then what exactly are you doing?" I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. How had we gotten here? How had my hard work and dedication become twisted into something sinister? "I think," Martha said, her voice low and dangerous, "that it's time you made a choice, Lily. Your family or your precious career?" Michael nodded, his face set in grim lines. "She's right, Lily. Something has to change." I stood there, frozen, as the weight of their words crashed over me. They were asking me to give up everything I'd worked for, to become the subservient housewife I'd never wanted to be. In that moment, something inside me snapped. A lifetime of swallowing my anger, of biting my tongue, of trying to please everyone but myself. It all came rushing to the surface. "No," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What was that?" Martha leaned forward, her eyes glittering with triumph. I straightened my spine, looked her dead in the eye, and said, "No, I won't choose. I won't give up my career, and I won't let you bully me anymore." The room fell silent. Martha's mouth hung open in shock. Michael stared at me like he'd never seen me before. I turned on my heel and walked out, my heart pounding in my chest. As I climbed the stairs to what used to be my office, I could hear Martha's shrill voice behind me. "Michael, are you going to let her speak to me like that? Do something." But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. The recorder was still running in my pocket, capturing every word. This was just the beginning. The day of Ruth's 80th birthday arrived, and I felt sick to my stomach. I'd spent the past week avoiding Martha and Michael as much as possible, retreating to our bedroom with my laptop whenever I could. The voice recorder had become my constant companion, capturing every snide comment and heated argument. As we pulled up to Ruth's house, I plastered on a smile. "Ready?" I asked Michael. He grunted in response, barely looking at me. We'd hardly spoken since my outburst, the silence between us growing heavier by the day. Martha tottered out of the back seat, already unsteady on her feet. She'd started drinking in the car, claiming it was to calm her nerves. I bit my tongue, knowing any comment would only lead to another fight. Ruth greeted us at the door, her face lighting up when she saw me. "Lily, dear, so good to see you." She pulled me into a warm hug, then turned to Michael and Martha with a noticeably cooler demeanor. "Hello, you two." I felt a small surge of satisfaction at Ruth's obvious preference for me. At least someone in this family was on my side. The party was in full swing, the backyard filled with friends and relatives. I mingled, grateful for the chance to talk to people who didn't constantly belittle me. But I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled in my stomach. That feeling proved justified when Martha clinked her glass, demanding everyone's attention. "I'd like to make a toast," she slurred, her eyes unfocused, "to my darling son, Michael, and his wife." I tensed, sensing trouble. "Michael," Martha continued, her voice growing louder, "you've always been such a good boy, so patient, even when you married beneath you." A hush fell over the crowd. I felt all eyes turn to me, my cheeks burning with humiliation. "Mom," Michael said weakly, "maybe we should sit down." But Martha was on a roll. No, I need to say this. Lily here, she thinks she's so smart with her fancy job, but what kind of wife is she? Can't even give you children, can't even cook a decent meal." I stood frozen, unable to believe this was happening. Where was my voice recorder? I needed proof of this moment, this public humiliation. "And now," Martha went on, swaying slightly, "now she's trying to turn you against me. Your own mother." "Well, I won't stand for it. It's time you put her in her place, Michael. Tell her who's really important in this family." I turned to Michael, silently pleading with him to stop this, to defend me. But to my horror, he nodded. "You're right, Mom," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent yard. "Lily's been selfish. She needs to learn her place." The world seemed to tilt around me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could feel was the weight of dozens of pitying stares. Ruth's voice cut through the fog. "That's quite enough," she said sharply. "Martha, Michael, you should be ashamed of yourselves." But the damage was done. I turned and ran, tears blurring my vision. I found myself in Ruth's guest bathroom, locking the door behind me. As I splashed cold water on my face, I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror. Who was this woman staring back at me? This broken, humiliated shell of a person? No, I wouldn't let them do this to me. I wouldn't let them reduce me to nothing. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and the voice recorder. I had weeks of evidence, weeks of abuse and gaslighting and manipulation. It was time to use it. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to do. This would change everything. There would be no going back. But as I replayed Martha's drunken tirade in my mind, as I remembered Michael's betrayal, I knew I had no choice. It was time to fight back. I unlocked the bathroom door, my head held high. Let them think they'd broken me. Let them think they'd won. They had no idea what was coming. I emerged from the bathroom, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. The party had resumed its uneasy chatter, but I could feel the weight of curious glances. Martha's drunken tirade had left a palpable tension in the air. Ruth approached me, concern etched on her face. "Lily, dear, are you all right?" I managed a tight smile. "I will be, Ruth. Thank you." She squeezed my hand. "I'm so sorry about Martha and Michael. Their behavior is inexcusable." "You're right," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "and I'm not going to excuse it anymore." Ruth's eyes widened as I strode purposefully towards the center of the gathering. I caught sight of Michael and Martha, huddled together near the punch bowl. They both looked up as I approached, Martha's face twisting into a sneer. "Well, look who decided to grace us with her presence again," she slurred. "Come to apologize for ruining the party?" I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled out my phone and the voice recorder, connecting them with shaking hands. "What are you doing?" Michael asked, his brow furrowed. "Something I should have done a long time ago," I replied. Before they could stop me, I pressed play. Martha's voice, shrill and cruel, filled the air. "You're a disgrace, Lily. A barren, useless woman. Michael deserves better than you." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I watched as shock and horror dawned on the faces around me. Michael lunged forward, trying to grab the recorder. "Turn that off!" But I danced out of his reach, letting the recordings continue. His own voice joined his mother's, agreeing with her insults, laughing at her cruel jokes. "You see," I said, my voice rising above the cacophony of recorded abuse. "This is what I've been living with. This is what they're really like behind closed doors." Martha's face had gone pale. You've been spying on us?" "No," I retorted. "I've been protecting myself, gathering evidence of the emotional abuse you've subjected me to for years." The recordings kept playing, a litany of insults and degradation that seemed to go on forever. I watched as disgust and anger replaced the pity in the eyes of our friends and family. Finally, Ruth stepped forward, her face a mask of fury. "That's enough," she said, her voice trembling with rage. "Martha, Michael, I want you both out of my house. Now." "But Mom," Michael protested weakly. "No buts," Ruth snapped. "I've heard enough. What you've done to Lily is despicable. I'm ashamed to call you my son." As security escorted a protesting Martha and a shell-shocked Michael out, I felt a strange mix of vindication and exhaustion wash over me. The nightmare was finally over, but at what cost? Ruth approached me, tears in her eyes. "Lily, I had no idea. I'm so sorry you've had to endure this." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "What will you do now?" she asked gently. The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. I looked around at the faces of our friends and family, some supportive, others uncomfortable. I thought about the house I'd returned to, now tainted by months of abuse and betrayal. In that moment, I knew I couldn't go back. Couldn't pretend things could ever be the same. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I know I can't stay with Michael. Not after this." Ruth nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Whatever you decide, you have my support. Your family, Lily, the kind of family I'm proud to have." As the party slowly dispersed, I stood alone in Ruth's backyard, watching the sun set on the life I'd known. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with legal battles and emotional turmoil. But for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. I'd found my voice, my strength. And I knew whatever came next, I would face it on my own terms. The recorder sat heavy in my hand, a testament to my resilience and a key to my freedom. Tomorrow, I decided I would call a divorce lawyer. It was time to start my new life. The days following Ruth's birthday party were a whirlwind. I'd moved out of our house, staying with a sympathetic coworker while I sorted out my next steps. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from Michael, alternating between angry accusations and desperate pleas for forgiveness. I ignored them all. Today, I sat in my lawyer's office, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. The recordings I'd made were spread out on the desk between us, along with financial documents and other evidence of Michael and Martha's mistreatment. "This is strong stuff, Lily," Sarah, my lawyer, said. "With this evidence, we have a solid case for emotional abuse and grounds for divorce." I nodded, a mix of relief and anxiety churning in my stomach. "What's our next step?" "We file for divorce and—" Sarah was cut off by a commotion outside her office. The door burst open, and Michael stormed in, his face red with anger. Martha trailed behind him, her eyes darting around the room. "How dare you?" Michael shouted, slamming his hands on the desk. "You think you can just walk away and destroy our family?" I flinched but held my ground. "There's nothing left to destroy, Michael. You and Martha took care of that." Sarah stood, her voice stern. "Mr. Thompson, you need to leave. This is a private meeting." Michael ignored her, his gaze fixed on me. "You manipulative bitch. Those recordings? They're out of context. You've turned everyone against us." "The recordings speak for themselves," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Everyone heard the truth." Martha stepped forward, her face a mask of false concern. "Lily, dear, we're worried about you. You're not thinking clearly. Come home and we can work this out as a family." I almost laughed at the absurdity. "Family? You've never treated me like family. You've both made it clear that I'm nothing but a nuisance, a failure as a wife and woman." "That's not true," Michael protested, but his words rang hollow. Sarah moved towards the door. "I'm calling security. You need to leave now." As if on cue, 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Michael's face contorted with rage. "You'll regret this," he snarled. "I'll make sure you walk away with nothing. You hear me? Nothing." As the guards escorted Michael and Martha out, I felt my resolve wavering. Was I really prepared for the battle ahead? Sarah returned to her seat, her expression grim. "I'm sorry about that, Lily, but their behavior only strengthens our case." I nodded, trying to steady my breathing. "What did Michael mean about me walking away with nothing?" Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Let's take a closer look at those financial documents." As we pored over bank statements and investment records, a sickening realization dawned on me. Large sums of money had been moving out of our joint accounts for months, funneled into accounts I didn't recognize. "He's been hiding assets," Sarah said, her voice tight with anger. "Preparing for this, most likely." I felt the room spin around me. All those years of hard work, saving, planning for our future, and Michael had been systematically dismantling it behind my back. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah's expression was determined. "We fight. We'll need forensic accountants, maybe even private investigators. It won't be easy, Lily, but we can prove what he's done." I closed my eyes, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what lay ahead. The divorce, the financial battle, the inevitable smear campaign Michael and Martha would wage against me. It all seemed insurmountable. For a moment I considered giving up. Maybe it would be easier to crawl back, to accept Michael's version of events, to return to the life I knew, no matter how miserable. But then I thought of the recordings, of the years of abuse and gaslighting. I thought of Ruth's support, of the shocked faces at the party when they heard the truth. I couldn't go back. Not now. Not ever. I opened my eyes, meeting Sarah's gaze. "Okay," I said, my voice growing stronger. "Let's do this. Whatever it takes, I'm ready." As Sarah began outlining our strategy, I felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. The road ahead would be hard, but for the first time in years, I was fighting for myself, and I was determined to win. The courtroom buzzed with tension as I took my seat beside Sarah. Across the aisle, Michael and Martha sat with their lawyer, both of them glaring daggers at me. I forced myself to look straight ahead, focusing on the judge's empty chair. This was it. The culmination of months of legal battles, financial investigations, and emotional turmoil. Everything I'd fought for hung in the balance. As the judge entered and the proceedings began, I found myself reliving the journey that had brought me here. The recordings that had exposed the truth, the shocking discovery of Michael's hidden assets, the grueling depositions where I'd had to relive every moment of abuse and betrayal. Sarah squeezed my hand reassuringly as she stood to present our case. Her voice was clear and confident as she laid out the evidence of emotional abuse, financial deception, and the systematic effort to undermine my self-worth and independence. "Your Honor," Sarah said, "the recordings you're about to hear demonstrate a clear pattern of emotional abuse perpetrated by both Mr. Thompson and his mother against my client." As the first recording played, I watched the judge's expression change from neutral to disturbed. Martha's shrill voice filled the courtroom, spewing vitriol about my supposed failings as a wife. Michael's voice chimed in, agreeing and adding his own cruel comments. I risked a glance at Michael and Martha. Martha's face was red with anger, while Michael looked pale and sick. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Their lawyer tried to argue that the recordings were taken out of context, that they were private family matters not meant for public consumption. But the judge wasn't buying it. Context or not, the judge said sternly, this behavior is unacceptable. As the financial evidence was presented detailing Michael's elaborate scheme to hide assets, I saw his shoulders slump. He knew he was caught. Just when I thought it was all over, Martha suddenly stood up, her voice shrill and desperate. This is all a lie. Lily's the abusive one. She manipulated Michael, turned him against me. She's trying to steal everything we have. The judge called for order, but Martha was beyond reason. She pointed at me, her face contorted with rage. You ungrateful whore, after everything we've done for you. In that moment, something inside me snapped. All the fear, all the self-doubt, all the years of swallowing my anger, it all came rushing out. I stood, my voice ringing clear and strong. No, Martha, you've done nothing for me except try to break me down. You and Michael both. But I'm not broken. I'm stronger than I've ever been. The courtroom fell silent. I could feel all eyes on me, but for once I didn't shrink from the attention. I'm not here to steal anything, I continued. I'm here to reclaim my life, my dignity, and the future you tried to take from me. And no matter what happens today, I've already won, because I'm free of you both. Martha sputtered incoherently, but Michael just stared at me, a mix of shock and something that looked almost like admiration on his face. The judge called for a recess, and as the courtroom emptied, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. Whatever the outcome, I knew I'd done the right thing. As we waited to be called back in, Sarah turned to me, her eyes shining with pride. That was incredible, Lily. You've come so far. I nodded, surprising myself with a small smile. I have, haven't I? Just then, a court officer approached us. The judge would like to see both parties in chambers, he said. My heart raced as we followed him. This was it, the moment of truth. As we entered the judge's chambers, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever came next. Win or lose, I was ready to face my future on my own terms. The judge's chambers felt suffocating as we all gathered around her desk. Michael and Martha stood on one side, their lawyer whispering urgently to them. Sarah and I stood on the other, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. Judge Hawkins looked at each of us in turn, her expression unreadable. I've heard enough, she said finally. And frankly, I'm appalled by what I've seen and heard today. She turned to Michael and Martha. Your behavior has been reprehensible. The emotional abuse, the financial deception, it's all grounds for a fault divorce. Michael's face fell, while Martha looked like she might explode. But the judge wasn't finished. Mr. Thompson, your attempts to hide assets are particularly troubling. I'm inclined to award Mrs. Thompson not just half of the marital assets, but punitive damages as well. I felt a surge of vindication, but it was tempered by a strange sadness. This was really the end of my marriage, of the life I'd known for so long. The judge turned to me. Mrs. Thompson, I commend your bravery in coming forward. It's clear you've been through a terrible ordeal. Thank you, Your Honor, I managed to say. However, she continued, I'm concerned about the recordings. While they've proven invaluable as evidence, they were obtained without consent. In light of the circumstances, I'm choosing not to pursue any legal action regarding them, but I want to be clear that this is not something I condone. I nodded, understanding the fine line I'd walked. Now, the judge said, I have a proposal for you all. We can continue this trial, air all your dirty laundry in public, and I'll make my ruling. Or you can agree to mediation right now and settle this privately. There was a moment of tense silence. Then, to my surprise, Michael spoke up. I'll agree to mediation, he said quietly. When Martha started to protest, he silenced her with a look. It's over, Mom. We've lost. The next few hours were a blur of negotiations. In the end, we reached an agreement that left me with more than half of our assets, including the house. Michael would pay alimony, and Martha would have no contact with me. As we left the courthouse, I felt a strange mix of emotions. relief, sadness, and an overwhelming sense of freedom. Ruth was waiting outside, her face anxious. When she saw me, she rushed over and enveloped me in a hug. "Oh, Lily," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "I'm so proud of you." As we pulled apart, I saw Michael and Martha exiting the building. Martha stormed off without a word, but Michael hesitated, then approached us. "Lily," he said, his voice low, I'm sorry for everything." I looked at him, this man I'd loved for so long, and felt a complex mix of anger, pity, and something like forgiveness. "I hope you find peace, Michael," I said finally, "and I hope you learn from this." He nodded, then walked away. I watched him go, feeling the last threads of our life together finally snap. Ruth squeezed my hand. "What now, dear?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past few months finally lifting. Now, I start living for myself. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I redecorated the house, erasing all traces of Martha's presence. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones. I even started taking art classes, something I'd always wanted to do, but never had the courage to try. Ruth and I grew closer. Our bond strengthened by the trials we'd faced together. She became the mother figure I'd always longed for, supportive and loving without being overbearing. One evening, as we sat on my porch watching the sunset, Ruth turned to me with a smile. "You know, Lily, I always knew you had this strength in you. I'm just glad you finally see it too." I smiled back, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. "Me too, Ruth. Me too." As the sky turned from gold to purple, I reflected on my journey. I'd lost a husband and a life I thought I wanted, but I'd gained something far more valuable, myself. At 58, I was starting a new chapter, one filled with possibilities I'd never dared to imagine before. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited for what the future might hold.